we want to thank you together, the Designer Society of America, and I would like to congratulate you for being honored today. And I guess the first question I want to think about is your rooms, your homes don't feel trendy at all. They feel, again, resolved in the moment. So I'm wondering, how do you define timeless design, and what are some of the elements you need to achieve it?
Um, First, can I just say how honored I am? I'm so excited to be nominated and won this award. It's it's truly unbelievable because I do feel like I'm kind of in this hidden niche. So, the fact that I'm getting accolades from my peers is feels really, really good. The
Yeah.
other thing that you just said about my rooms when you look at them, that they don't feel trendy, was probably one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten. So
That's kind.
that's, when you really try and aspire to create something and that's what other people are seeing is really special. So thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
it feels so good. And that made me like tingly all over. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Um, so back to your question, which you just asked. Will you ask that last line again when
Sure,
you
sure.
said,
Um, how do you define timeless design, and what are the
okay.
elements essential to achieving it?
I mean, the truth is that first of all, we're getting thrown so many images at us at such a crazy speed. So much, you have to rifle through in your head. When you're looking at things and you're seeing them a lot, you have to say to yourself, do I actually think this is beautiful, or just do I keep seeing it? And that's why I think it's pretty. So you kind of have to pull apart your brain and really figure out, what are you drawn to that is actually just beautiful, and you're drawn to it because it's just aesthetically, artfully different and great, as opposed to you're just, again, seeing it a lot. So I feel like for me, I'm really just, my goal is when I'm designing a room is that it's really about the whole mood of the room, that it feels good, that you walk in and you're like, this is so pretty. Like, I don't want to leave this room. I just want to stay here. So to have something be timeless, that's how I feel. Like this living room, which is my living room, I walked through here and I did this 15 years ago. And that's usually about, I'd say like 10, 15 years is when you kind of start saying, okay, is something getting tired? Should I refresh it? And then I start looking through each and every piece and I'm thinking, God, I still love that. I still love that. I still love that. And then I think, nope, I think we're okay. So I think that's really how I define it, is that in 20 years from now, are you still going to think it's a beautiful room that you want to be in, as opposed to picking apart each piece and saying, oh, brass is now out, it's now silver, or, something, more to that realm. Does that
Right.
kind of make sense?
Yes, it's a great answer.
Okay.
Speaking about pieces, I know from talking with you that you source pieces from around the world. This is
Mm-hmm.
a hallmark in your work. And
Yeah.
so I was wondering, how does traveling to find remarkable pieces add unique character to your spaces? Tell me about your process.
So I kind of work in a reverse process. I mean, I think the first thing that I do is, furniture plan and deciding where all the pieces are going to go. So in my head, I'll know, okay, I know that there's going to be two sofas in the room and there's a pair of lamps there, a pair of sconces. I know I need fixtures for these areas. So in my head, and on paper, I know all the pieces that I might need for that space. But I really kind of do it in reverse, where I spend probably half of my life completely combing, the world, which it's antique fairs, antique shows, brocantes, um, just anywhere that old and new design is. It's mostly vintage. I'd say like my signature and, what I'm drawn to are older things. But I feel like that is what then, it's almost like that is what decides on the mood that I'm going to go in for that project, for these rooms. So instead of me already knowing, okay, I want a chandelier that's going to be a 6-arm. I'm looking for a brass chandelier. I really don't know. Like a lot of times, like clients will say to me, they're like, what do you envision? What do you think it's going to be? And my answer is like, I don't know yet. I'll see. Like and when I'm out and I'm looking and I'm combing, something will get me in the direction where, we'll kind of decide where that room is going to go. I mean, I know the colors and the schemes. I mean, that's a different process for me, but the actual pieces will dictate the room instead of me dictating the pieces.
I see.
So that's I work a little bit more in reverse.
Right. So how much time do you spend traveling, looking at pieces, and how often are you find yourself in a shop?
Probably I'd say at least half of my life, if not more. I think that it's, it's becoming more and more difficult to find special pieces. I feel like, I've cultivated collectors and vendors and, all over the world. So I do have people that are, send me, pictures of things all the time. But, even now, and I've been doing this for so long, I still can't tell. Like as much as that's great, you can send me, the dimensions and I'm looking at the photograph. I really can't tell unless I see it in person. Right. And so, fortunately and unfortunately, that's what I have to do. So the core of my business is me personally traveling and going to these places and seeing these pieces in person. So it really does consume, at least I'd say like half of my life is, I'm outsourcing and looking and it's a love. I absolutely love it because it drives me. And it's, you always want to say, you always want to do what you love. I mean, that's the whole point of life, right? Is to being able to do that. But, it's really hard and it's daunting and it's exhausting, but it's also, thrilling and fun. And if I didn't have that, I don't know what I would do. Actually, I think it would be really difficult for me to produce these kinds of projects without me personally being able to do that. So
also sounds like a bit of a logistical challenge on some level, right? Getting everything back here.
It's huge. People ask me all the time and I'm like, I have, just for an example, I have Italian shippers. I have shippers in the Netherlands, France, Asia, but different, Hong Kong, Thailand, all of these people, I have warehouses that are all over the world and in the United States. And it's a logistic nightmare, but I'm just so used to it. And you just have to, I have people that obviously are tracking and tracing and doing all this and all of the, the importing and what that means and the nice new tariffs.
Oh yeah, well.
So, yes, but yeah, it's a whole business in itself. I mean, it's almost like somebody who owns a store or an auction house. So it's almost like I have two careers, which instead of look, most designers can just they go to their local, they go to the mart or the design centers or or antique stores, but I broaden that and I kind of use the entire, world as my source instead of just local.
I suppose on some level you're also inspired by these places you're going. It's not only going
100%.
Yeah.
100% to go and to see. I think in the design world, the people push the most boundaries on hotels, restaurants, and then also obviously getting to go and look in, I would say museums. I'm not the biggest museum person, but I am the biggest person who wanders the street. I literally, if a door is open and I can go into, like if I'm in Milan and how they have like the buildings look so austere, but if you can get inside, the courtyards are magnificent. And I'm taking pictures of the way the tile is. or the way, a light fixture is installed. All of those are, extreme motivations for me, and really drive, everything I do, especially when I'm trying to constantly do something new, each project doing new. It's like, if I had a formula and people came to me and just said, "Oh, I love that, that house that you did. That's great." It's almost like, first of all, I doubt I'll even be able to find all that. I'm not going to find all the same things anyway. But secondly, I always say to them, well, that's great that you love that. And now I know what you're drawn to, but let me create something completely different for you. So,
That experience of travel and how it informs your work. I remember having a conversation with a designer named Matthew Smythe in New York, and he was telling me about going to Paris to see the Mona Lisa. And he said, it's not really about going to the Louvre and just standing in front of the Mona Lisa. It's about the morning air. It's about the coffee, the anticipation, the walk, the Tuileries Garden, the pyramid, going inside, the anticipation. Everything you see along the way informs your experience of the Mona Lisa. And it sounds like that's similar to what your process is.
it's
Everything along the way informs.
It's exact. Like when you're talking about that, I can picture myself, and I'm walking and I'm thinking about the pavers on the stone in front, that's outside of the Louvre, and how they do their grout lines, and how that metal pyramid is then going to be seamed onto the ground. I mean, I think so much architecturally that I implement in my design in that light. There's nothing like Parisian light. I don't know what's going on, the placement of the world, but how it goes in and how the air is like stagnant. And so, yes, I mean, it's literally what drives me and what inspires me. So
I think
I could smell it. And the same with even, being in Thailand or, other places. It completely is inspiring. Not just work that somebody might have done, which is like you're going and staying at a gorgeous hotel, or, you're in Cambodia and they're really pushing, design and, things like that. But it's just also looking at the combination together and constantly looking how people put things together in a way that I just wouldn't think of.
so this is that unique idea for every project that I want to touch on for a minute. So every one of your projects is unique. How involved are your clients? You had mentioned earlier that they see something, show you, and they like it, but
Right.
how involved are they in the process as it matriculates?
I think the first thing that I always try to figure out from them is their level of modern versus traditional. Like that's kind of like the first, whether it's somebody who's single or, a couple, it's kind of, that's always the gauge for me. Because if you kind of look at my project, it's kind of like, like what's the percentage of old versus new that's in there. And so, and then I always want to be able to push them to something that they didn't think about, because the whole point to hire somebody is, for them to show you things that, and, a world that you couldn't have dreamed of yourself. That's the whole point to pay somebody. So I think I get it to get into what they're drawn to, colors. First thing is I say, what colors do you not like? I start like there. And so I'm like, okay, none of those. And even someone says, I'm not a red person, but I might say, well, can I show you a couple of shades of burgundy? Tell me if you even like those. Do you like orange? So I think the color gauge is huge. And even when you say how much do you like modern versus traditional, the funny thing is I recently had somebody who said, I really don't like vintage. I like contemporary, I like modern. And I said, okay, great. Can you show me, maybe just do a Pinterest board for me? Let me see what things that, you're drawn to. It was the most traditional board I've ever seen in my life. So it was so funny. So you really have to, dissect, and because some words that somebody might use as traditional and modern isn't the same. So I think that's how involved I like to get with them. And then, of course, then it goes on to how do they want to live in this house? and getting into that part of it.
The idea that people hire designers to show them what they don't know they need yet reminds me of these conversations I have in design. Stephen Sill said to me, people don't come to me because they want me to show them what they want. They want me to show them what they don't know they want yet. And
That's
that's sort
exactly
of a
right.
Steve Jobs quote, as I remember. He said, "Don't give the people what they want, give them what they don't know they want yet." And that's
Exactly
the
right.
exciting piece about design, right? Is to get into someone's head and push them slightly outside their comfort zone, show them things that they might not have thought about, and then you have magic, right? It's that alchemy moment where someone comes home and say, "This would not have
100%.
been what I thought I wanted, but wow, is it amazing?"
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I mean, that is a perfect quote. Exactly. I know when anybody says to me, "Well, do you really ask them and how much involved and how involved do you want them to be?" And I'm thinking, isn't that what they're paying us for? I
Yeah.
mean, if not to get into tangent, but let's say I hired a stylist. I don't want to tell them like everything I want. I want them to show me things that I wouldn't find on my own or think about on my own. So that's how, I look at it.
Tell me a bit about the relationship to interiors and exteriors, the architecture of a house, and how you view the interior. Do you prefer things to match up? Do you like some tension?
I definitely like tension. I don't know maybe you know this. I don't know who said that you always want like a little bit of ugly in something.
Uh,
Do you?
I'm going to say Mucci Prada, but that's probably not right.
Oh, I mean, maybe. I mean, I
Yeah.
always have that like in the side where there's just like a little bit of, it's almost like a little bit of grunge, with something. So, the high and the low. But um, look, I don't want anything to ever look like caricature-y, like you're building a French chateau in the middle of, the suburbs of New Jersey, at least linking to how historical or where that was or where that's from. Let's say, for example, the recent house that I did in the West Village. I mean, that's, house from the late 1800s, but the clients were very modern. I mean, that's what they were really drawn to. So the architecture of that was very clean and pulled back. But that's where I felt that it was so appropriate to bring in so much vintage because, these are pieces that would have been there. So to walk into this house, on the outside, it's completely traditional. On the inside, it's a lot cleaner and more modern. But then the pieces itself kind of, help bring that back. And I always say, like, you want this house to look like it was handed down in generations, but that the new generation has added their own twist to it.
Right.
So that's kind of
No, I
what,
get that.
yeah,
And, and there's this idea of, I've always called it the secret sauce of interior design, is that when you enter a space, it doesn't appear as if the roof came off, everything landed from a spaceship and the roof came back down, like that house in New Jersey that feels like a French chateau, right? It has to
yeah,
feel like an organic, a space that's developed over time, because then everyone who enters it feels as if there's something familiar, something about it that,
yeah,
well, that's my view.
yes. No, 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 that's a great reference. I mean, I always like break it down and I say it not so eloquently and say, you don't want your house to look like you bought it all from a store, you
Well,
just, but
it's
that's where
so
it's
important.
from.
If you want it to have character, right? It has to
Yeah.
have that have some sense of history.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say my goal is so when your friends come over to your house, first of all, they think all of the pieces were already in your family and they were handed down. And they also are going to look around and ask you, where did all of this come from? Like they had never, where. And one of the things I do is I make a book for my clients, which have all of the pieces listed and where that light fixture could be from. And it's Murano from the 1960s, and this is where I found it. And they literally have it and it's printed out and they get it out. They tell me all the time and they just kind of hand it to their
That,
friends and they look through everything.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk just for a minute about advice you might give aspiring designers, people coming up. Um, what would you tell them about developing a personal style, while at the same time having practical, uh, uh, having it be practical?
You know, a lot of young designers do ask me my opinion on how do they get clients? How do they get jobs? And the first thing I tell them is whatever their space that they're living in now, they better blow it out. They better spend either every extra, dollar they have on it. But when I say that, obviously, you're young, you don't have a lot of money. And I mean, this was me and this is what I did. But you have to be creative. You have to start, it's with pink colors and it's with finding cool fabrics that don't cost a lot of money. And it's putting it together so that you're going to really set yourself apart and you're going to wow people. Like,
Right.
Don't follow the trends. Don't have it look like, everybody else's. The second thing is functionality, like having spatial plans that are really unique, that, you set up the living room that it doesn't look like you have your two sofas with your two chairs, create that space, make nooks, make a little, cool loungy, something in the side with a lamp, things that will really set your space apart so that when someone's looking to hire you, they're going to be drawn to you.
Right.
I'll a side note, when young designers send me their portfolios, and I see a lot of the same thing. They're just picking what is trendy and what is out there now, and they're just placing it in these homes. And the truth is like, I want nothing to do with that. I would want somebody, even if it wasn't my style, even let's say that they were like the most, modern, industrial, hard-edged, masculine. But if it was a point of view that was really cool and original, I'd hire them. Because I'm not looking for somebody who thinks the same way as me. I want somebody who can completely, push me and show me different things. So I think you gotta make your space, and because you gotta photograph things and have things to show people. And
Right.
so make your bathroom the coolest bathroom you've ever seen, your dorm room, whatever that is. But
It makes me think of this story. I love to tell stories, obviously, right? So there was a guy named Randy
I love
Ridless.
to hear them, so keep
Yeah.
going.
There was a guy in the early 90s named Randy Ridless who was a small young designer and had a really cool apartment, but then he managed to get chosen for Kips Bay,
Okay.
to a room in the Kips Bay Decorator Showhouse. And he got this tiny little closet of a room that was sort of like, oh my God. But he
Mhm.
did exactly what you said to do. He turned it out. Like everything was thought of. This remarkable jewel box space. The New York Times ran it as the lead image in
Mhm.
reviewing the house. And 4 months later, he got hired by Burberry to redesign the stores.
I mean,
And those kinds of things, it's the importance of developing a point of view, like you suggested, right?
it's yeah, I mean, I'm like, send me his portfolio right now. I want to look at his stuff. I could only imagine. And when you're even talking about, and you said, the knob that he picked, or how that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that originality and that brilliant mind.
Right. It's really
Yeah.
great. Customization,
Yeah.
backing up for a minute.
Okay.
Tell me about custom sofas, bespoke hardware. What's most rewarding for you as a design professional in developing those kinds of things?
Well, I think that, well, first of all, it's always when whatever you had in your head comes to fruition. I mean, that's always like the most rewarding, when you're like, yes, when it's finished, you're like, that is what I dreamt up in here. And and again, for me, I'm just constantly trying to look at things in a different way. How do we make this kitchen not look like a kitchen? How do we do this to make the cabinetry a little bit more elegant, but still functional, that the kids' hands can, to wash it off and things like that. So I think it's really just it's so important. And the hardest thing is, did you ask me what the hardest thing about it was?
Well, I'm just thinking, I don't know if you knew this. I owned an upholstery factory in the 90s in New York
I
City.
didn't know that.
Yeah. And it's a long story. I was working
Uh-huh.
with, anyway, but clients would come, designers would come to me and they'd bring their clients and, we want the pitch of this to be this way. On this side of the sofa is where the wife typically will sit. So we want that to
Uh-huh.
be slightly softer. And over here is the gentleman's end of the sofa. All those things really, that customization work is another thing that sets design professionals apart from one another because it's
Yes.
not the sofa. And look, there's nothing wrong with a showroom sofa, and I'm not, diminishing them. I
Yeah.
just think the real excitement comes in customization.
And that's a great example, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking about when people ask me, they're like, "Oh, well, do you buy vintage everything?" And I said, I really don't buy sofas vintage. I said the reason why is I need them to be the exact correct size for the
Mhm.
space. I also need them to be the fit for my client. Most of my clients right now like a deep, cushy, you get into the, whether, the down wrapped versus, full down and all of that. And what do you want it to look like when you get up, and, all of those things. But I do spend an enormous amount of time with my upholsterers. Normally I work with two in Chicago a lot, and they know that they literally have to go in a step by step with me. First do the frame. Then I come over and sit on the frame and I'm staring at it, because whatever I draw out, it doesn't matter if it's drawn on paper. When it's in person, it always looks different. And as much as I wish that whatever I drew, that's just really the end result, it never is. So it is exactly what you just described. But I go in there at each step, the frame. Okay, let's adjust this. That looks a little short, a little tall. Then the next one is, let me see all the cushions. Let me sit how this cushion is, and with that. And so it's beyond time consuming, and it would be easier and cheaper, and I would make a lot more money if I just bought it from a showroom, because time is money. So to keep going back to the upholsterer on every step and saying, okay, now when you put the muslin on it, then let me sit it, then don't put the fabric on it yet. Then I'm sitting there laying out the fabric and seeing where the seam lines are going to be. So I'm, relentless when it comes to that. But, it works out, and it really makes the room, and it makes, your client so happy because it's so beautiful and it's, perfectly customized. So sofas are a big thing. I always say I make sofas and beds, but
Okay.
those are major things.
And case goods, do you end up designing tables and that sort of thing?
I've never designed a table. I've done somewhere I've maybe, adjusted something on it, or I've bought a vintage piece. I've done, now I'm going to like remember, yeah, you made that. I've made, nightstands. The things that I've done the most lately are bars. So I never like, architects are going to hate me, but I don't like a lot of built-ins. I like everything to look like a piece of furniture. And
Okay.
so I think that the last, few bars that I've made, that's when I'm like, okay, how do we keep this that it's still feeling light and delicate like a piece of furniture versus, when it's a built-in. I mean, one thing that is a huge issue when you're doing these things is having to put like appliances in them. So let's say you have to have a wine fridge or an ice maker. Those are 24 inches deep. A furniture piece really is never 24 inches deep. It's usually 18, maybe 20, but like that's, the whole thing of a proportion and when you see something in a room.
Mhm.
So the last, I'd say like smart thing that I did was, and you have to do this from the beginning because I was, building the house from the start, was we cut out the back of the wall we knew in the beginning to house that refrigerator and the ice machine, so it fit and nooked into the wall. So the piece only still had to be 18 inches deep, so it still felt like a furniture. So it was really hidden in there.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where you've got to really think ahead. And again, in the beginning, I didn't know what that bar was going to actually look like. If it was going to be, a funky 1970s or 50s or whatever it was going to be. But I just knew that those were the appliances that they were going to house. So then I worked with a contractor, at least, knowing, okay, here's where it's going to go. I don't know what it's going to look like. But that's definitely one of my recent proud pieces that I'm excited about that I did.
I'm going to switch gears for a minute and talk about art, because there's a big abstract canvas behind you. I see there. So it gets me wondering about how important art is in your projects, and do you help clients procure pieces? How involved are you there?
So it's it depends on the client. Some clients are very, very, into it themselves, where they have these pieces they like to collect. They have, people that they've already worked with, or pieces that are of their own that then you've got to implement. So that's a big thing that we start, and they say, look, here's all the art pieces that I have, and I want them to be on main floors. So knowing that, and you got to start from the beginning, and knowing there's going to be a large piece, it's going to be over there. Make sure you don't have sconces near them, or make sure you have sconces near them. So that's a major thing that we have to talk about from the beginning. I find that a lot of my younger clients, and I say younger, 30s and 40s, haven't collected anything. And so they really want me to start these collections. I don't really buy a lot of crazy high-end art. Most of it is just collected from my travels. Mm-hmm. Whether I find it, there's some galleries in Paris that I love, and some, this man who collects only Parisian from the he's kind of 20s through the 60s. And I love the pieces, and they're framed originally, and they're so, fabulous. They're not crazy expensive, but, they're pieces that are great, starter pieces. So I constantly am collecting, myself, of these pieces, whether it's, I have something right now that I bought these canvases from this woman that it was, an Italian director who also got into making art later in his life. And they are they literally are the span of this wall. And she had two of them, and I bought them recently. And again, I started there, and now I'm envisioning whose house, where could this go? What could, that be the center point? And I actually know where one of them is going to go. And it's going to be, I'm going to make the backsplash of a kitchen. Instead of having, there's not going to be a hood, there's going to be two sconces on the side, but that entire canvas is going to be the backsplash wall of a kitchen right underneath the stove. So it's in here. I know that's what I'm going to do.
Keep me posted. I want to see the pictures.
I will. Mm-hmm.
I suppose, thinking about the future of design, I think back to before the internet and the democratization of design, because everybody suddenly had access, mm-hmm. and how interiors went from being sort of, I wouldn't say period rooms, but predictable, and that there wasn't so much cultural influence. That's completely changed, right? Because everyone has access to all this information, so eclecticism continues to move forward. How do you see the future thinking about interiors? It will continue to develop that way?
I think what you just said is how everybody sees it now. And I was just in Paris, and I was looking for properties for a client that wants to do a project in Paris. And it's so funny, everything starts, looking similar. And you say, wow, these interiors, this kitchen, these bathrooms, this could be in London. I could be in New York right now. I could be and so it's like everybody's starting to kind of blend and lock on to like looks, like this is that look, that's that look. And so when I was looking at all of these, my first inkling is, how do we go the completely opposite direction? How do we not look like any of these at all? And I did start seeing, I was like, yeah, something's going to go in the other direction, because people are going to start getting, fed up with everything looking the same. So hopefully there will be just a lot more artists and designers that will start having their own point of view. But you hope that clients are really open to it, because again, the mind plays tricks on you. The more you see something, you're like, oh, I like that, I'm drawn to it. And you're like, do you really like it? Or is it just because you keep seeing it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the cultural influences are definitely blending. Now, I'll say that I, first of all, I've been lucky because I've worked with a lot of people from the Middle East, India, China, all of these, different cultures. And one thing that I think sets them all apart is how they like to live in their house. So that's for me when I'm working with these clients, is that's the cultural differences. When you host people, are your friends gathering in the kitchen? That's such an American thing, and I feel like it's starting to gravitate a little bit more in Europe. However, it's not like that in the Middle East or India, where they'll sometimes say, I'm talking about their kitchen island, and I'll say, how many stools do you want? How many people? And sometimes they'll say, I don't want anybody in there. Nobody's hanging out in there. So they're in the dining room. However, other cultures will be like, we do not use a dining room at all. Our families only gather and they will be in these rooms. So I think, for me, that's the most deciphering a cultural, differences is really how they're going to live in this space.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as design goes and their aesthetic, it's starting to blend a lot more. It's not, as unfortunately, it's not as unique as it used to be.
Right.
And, I think also those cultures are drawn to me a little bit more because of my use of color and, my use of, antiques, vintage pieces, pulling from, history as much as I can. But yeah, the world is getting smaller, and that's it's not the prettiest thing, because I
Right.
think what's so fabulous is being able to be in these other, and be in other countries and feel like you're living in a different land, in a different world. So I hope it goes back.
Yeah. There's a question that just pops up for me. So where's the place in the world you want to go back to next?
Oh wow.
For me,
Like,
for me, it's always Rome. And the same little
always.
cacio e pepe restaurant that I've been to, I don't know how many times.
Okay, it's funny you say that, because that's my next place where I'm like, I want to conquer Rome, where
Okay.
I feel like I'm 75% conquered, France, Paris, just I have like my own world and my own niche there. And the truth is anytime you say to me, where do you want to go? I'm like, Paris. I just, I'm just drawn there. But Rome, yeah, I have a vision of having, it doesn't have to be a big apartment, but it's all about the terrace. And what I love about Rome is the garden and the greens and, all of that. But look, there's places where I was in, I'd like to go back to. I was in Taiwan, and I went to this tiny little hot spring spa that has 8 rooms, and it's attached to some famous hot spring, but they have their own private area where, attached to this little boutique hotel.
Mhm.
And the hotel was so unique. And I remember sitting there, and they had like Hermes tableware and flatware. And it was just like, it was such a unique thing being in this world, and obscure. Literally, it was like outside. It was like in a suburb of in Taiwan and in Taipei, and it was, so that I'd like to go back to, because I went there like 8 years ago, and I think about that. And God, I mean, I think I just like to. I mean, for me, I like to spend more and more time in these places. So anytime I book a trip, I'll never book a trip for like 2 days. Even when I go to New York, like and when I'm there with clients or anything like that, even if I only need to be there for 2 days, I always book a week, maybe 2 weeks, because I want to make sure that I have enough time and that I'm seeing and doing, things, not just sitting there and rushing. So
Send you a list of things to do in Rome. I can certainly.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I think we're wrapping it up here today in this conversation. So you've gotten from 15 years ago, you started a business, and here you are today. And we
Hmm.
talked briefly about what you thought a young designer should do to sort of begin to create something unique for themselves. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Um, I see myself, I started this business by, people call it, I was a developer. I mean, I was a house flipper. I was buying properties. I was in college
Oh,
and,
that's
I was a general contractor. So I learned the construction business. I bought, designed with friends. That's how I started. And after 2008 and the market was bad, I had people over the years always asking me. They saw what I built, would I design their homes, would I do this, would I now decorate. So that's how my career kind of began, which me doing completely my own projects. And I think I kind of see, we're talking about Rome, and what I would like to do is find gorgeous properties and completely renovate them and have every single little, piece picked out, where it's the linens and the china and every single, and it's, drop dead gorgeous. And maybe I do that. And then probably one of my clients will say, can I please buy that from you? But something going, a little bit more in that direction, because, as for a designer, we don't really like to ask people, do you like this? We really just like to have carte blanche. And I feel like my projects that are the best and that you'll see are from the clients that have said, I trust you, just do whatever you want. What I like, and push it like that. So I kind of see it going a little bit, where maybe I'll just have one or two clients, but I'm doing kind of my own developments and my own projects all over
right.
the world.
Do you do commercial properties? I suppose I should know this.
I don't.
Right.
No, I mean, I've done some really cool funky offices for clients before, but I haven't done any, like I haven't done a hotel or a restaurant or anything like that. It's really been mostly residential. Yeah.
You never know. Maybe you get to
Okay.
a place
Okay.
where you never know. You get to a place where people say they just want you to do what you're like you do with
Sure.
Golden Line, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, of
That
course, that's always the dream.
that is the most successful work. It's like when someone's allowed to be an artist, because it is the
Hmm.
decorative arts we're talking about. When someone's allowed, like you, to do something that really you understand and you're behind and you've chosen all the right things, you
Yeah.
end up with really great spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know. You want that, and then it's also scary because you're like, "Uh-oh. Now they said you can do it, so you better really do it." You have no reason not to push it and really be creative. So it makes you like, you got to dig deep.
And that's a luxurious place to be in for a designer,
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
right? Well, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today, and congratulate you again on for receiving this award from the Designer Society of America. I also want to thank you for contributing to my new book, which I have a new book for Rizzoli coming out called 100,
Yes.
and you're one of the 100 rooms in the book. It took me 2 years to pull that all together. I'm grateful to have you involved.
I mean, first of all, to be able to have it done by you is a huge honor. Secondly, Rizzoli, I mean, there's, I think when I got the call for the first time, or I don't know if it was, I think either a call or an email, I thought somebody was just trying to sell me some Rizzoli books. I couldn't really believe it. So
Such a universal response when I reach out to people I don't know.
yeah,
Is someone will say, "Who are you? What are you trying to tell me?" Because it seemed anyway. It's one of the great joys of my work.
yeah.
Every book I include 10 people who I don't know, and it's part of the my creative process to say, yes, I'm going to include Stephen Gambrell in New York, and yes, I'm
Yeah,
going to include Miles Redd, and of course, I'm going to talk to Bunny Williams and the people
yeah.
who I have ongoing relationships with. But one of the real joys is to spend that time necessary to find people whose point of view I really appreciate and who I think are really building a career for themselves. And you are one of those 10, this book.
I mean, Carl, thank you. I mean, I'm beyond honored, and I think I'm a little, I'm a little shell shocked from it too. So I really, appreciate you including me. It means a lot.
In my humble view, you belong in the book. There you have it.
Thank you. And I'll tell you, yeah, everyone's very excited. I think one of my clients just said she just bought 5 of them, and I was like, wait, okay, great.
And
Yes.
thank you
Uh-huh.
for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was fun talking to you.
Thank you.